Welcome to Open for Small Business, the podcast that celebrates the grit, determination, and resilience of small business owners and experts. We dive into the real stories behind running a business, from the big wins to the tough lessons, with candid conversations from those who've lived it. I'm your host, Bridget Snelling, Country Manager for Xero in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We're open for small business. Let's get into it. Welcome to Open for Small Business. We've got something a little bit different for you today. I'm delighted to be joined by Carolyn Young, the CEO of Retail NZ. It's a great time to talk to Carolyn as we approach Black Friday and the shopping period pre-Christmas of November and December. Carolyn, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Look, I'm great. Thank you very much for having me. It's really good to be here.
So Carolyn, to start off, just tell us about Retail NZ. What do you do?
So we're a member-based organisation, so we provide advocacy, policies, research, advice, support, all sorts of services for retailers. We spend a lot of time advocating on their behalf, a lot of time up at Parliament, a lot of media, making sure that, the settings are right for retailers and how we can support and encourage them to be successful and, helping retail in New Zealand.
And how many retailers do we have in New Zealand?
So there's about, we've lost a few, right? So there's probably about sort of 27,000 retailers and most of them are SMEs. So you've got a small portion of really large retailers that take up a big chunk of retail. Yeah. And then there's lots and lots of SMEs. Lots of people with one store or two or three stores, people that they've been in retail for 40 years or they're just entering retail. It's sort of really exciting times. So, it's a busy environment. There's 230,000 people work in retail across New Zealand. So it's 9% of the workforce. So it's a lot of people.
And of course, it's been really tough. It's been tough trading conditions for retailers. I mean, ever since COVID, I think it has been relentless, hasn't it? We haven't really had any sort of proper recovery. Just kind of jumping to the stats, our XSBI, Xero Small Business Insights, shows that we did have 4 quarters of negative results for retail. And then we've just had a slight modest recovery in the September quarter of 2.9% growth. So very modest signs that things might be slightly improving, but still very, very tough.
Well, I think when we take into account inflation and we think about where inflation's been at and population growth, then, we're actually still not better off. Yeah. So it is, and, when you're having an increase off a really low base, and if you go back sort of over 10 quarters, there's probably 8 of those that are negative. There's only 1 or 2 in that period. So it's been super tough. And most retailers have really, they've cashed in all their chips, they've used all their cash flow, they've done restructures, they've got rid of extra staff or haven't rehired when someone's left. They're really conscious of that bottom line because we've seen increase in costs through everything from electricity to freight to wages to leases to rates. Heaven forbid the rates have been super high, and then the supply of goods has come in at a higher price, and a whole range of other things that mean that it's really difficult to actually break even. So a lot of businesses have used all their cash flow or they've got additional loans out with the bank and they're really kind of just sort of hanging on with their fingertips, waiting for, this quarter, because this quarter's the quarter in retail. Yeah,
that's right. I know last December, actually, the numbers weren't great. I think it was one of the worst Decembers we've had. And for retailers, obviously, you think December's going to be huge because of Christmas. But we are just in advance of Black Friday. So where did Black Friday come from? I feel like this is another adoption of American culture.
It's absolutely an adoption of American culture. I was just saying before, my partner, Mark, he's American. And so, really understands Black Friday well. Because it's the Friday after Thanksgiving. And so Thanksgiving's the fourth Thursday in November.
Right.
It's not a date, it's that fourth Thursday. And then it's the only 4-day weekend holiday in the States. So
it's a massive deal. So, I guess it's like their equivalent of our Boxing Day sales, or what used to be our Boxing Day sales, right?
Absolutely. And so they do some really crazy sales, and they have, there's been times where people have been crushed in the queues trying to get through stores and all of those sorts of crazy things, nuts. Right?
And so we've adopted our culture, we've adopted Black Friday, and that's coming up. And so what does that mean for our retailers? Because it was never a thing. And I feel like it's only the past few years that it's become a big event on the retail calendar. How are businesses, how are retailers handling this? Is it a challenge for them or an opportunity?
Yeah, let me try and unpick that. There's a couple of things there. So firstly, absolutely, we've adopted it from the States. Yeah. Secondly, it has exploded much more in the last few years, right? And it's now, for many stores, the most important sales period in the calendar. So more important than Boxing Day. It's sort of overtaken.
And it's not just online. It's kind of throughout. No. It's everywhere.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
But then there's a kind of a two-step sort of situation. So you've got the bigger retailers who have got the opportunity to get cheaper goods through suppliers, and they can shift stock. They can do some special deals on specific areas to get people in store, and then they might buy at a different price for other products while they're in store.
Got it.
So, they've got those headline articles about the 50% off or 60% off, and you come in looking for that item. It may or may not be there, and you end up buying something else.
At full price.
Yeah. Or 10% or 20% off. But what actually happens for a smaller retailer, it's quite different. And we hear much sort of a very mixed view from smaller retailers, from our members. What they struggle with is that their structure of their business is built on what we used to term RRP, so recommended retail price. And so they're buying from a supplier. They don't get any major discounts. Their freight, they're absorbing all of those prices, increasing in terms of freight and distribution and electricity or insurance, all of those things. And they're selling, their business structure and their profitability is structured around selling at the most of their product at the full retail price. So if they continue to have sales like some of the big guys do, where their model is a sales model.
That's right, yeah.
They won't even break even. So they're really pressured about, do I join in or do I not join in? I live in Kandala in Wellington, and one in our local, we've got a small CBD in Kandala, like a small shopping precinct. And Sheila from Hamilton and Murray's got a really beautiful fashion store there. And she did do some sales for Labour Weekend, and she put some just specific items up to attract attention and get a bit of traffic through, but not a broad brush sale, because Labour Weekend is also another kind of one of those markers in this quarter. So some smaller retailers are thinking about maybe just a little few things on sale to bring people in, knowing you can't compete with the big guys. And I think it's that differentiation and knowing what is your point of difference? Why do people come and shop with you? It's the amazing customer service, the fact they know you when you walk in, they know your style, they know what it is that you like. They've got goods put aside for you. They said, or they've sent you an email because something new came in. So it's that you don't get in the bigger stores, and the smaller stores really have to lean into that customer service, because that's what drives sales.
I think that's a really interesting point, and it is something that I think smaller retailers have the advantage over larger retailers, because they can offer a more personalized service. I think, and I use this example because it's really the only experience I've had in recent times that has really stuck with me. There's a retailer in Newmarket, a little shop, well, I don't know how little it is, but a shop called Fallen Front.
Yes.
And Bo, who runs it, I went in there one day and started chatting to him. They sell kind of streetwear for guys. Yes. I go to shop for my son, and the experience is incredible. They're always out on the street with a big sign saying shop local, shop local. You walk in, Bo or whoever's working in the store always says, hi, how are you? Looks you in the eye, shakes your hand, welcome to the store. And so for me, I've never bought anything on sale from Fallen Front.
Yes.
But I love the experience. I love going in there because I asked Bo about how he set up the shop, and there's passion and love there, and I like to support that. I actually think, and I went in there, and now they know my son and they know what he likes. So if I need to buy him something, they'll choose, and the whole experience is wonderful. And I compare that to crossing the road and going into a large sort of global retailer where there's no eye contact. They don't even really say hello. And it's those little things, it actually changes the whole experience and encourages you to shop.
It makes a big difference, doesn't it? That personal connection. And it means that, you're a mum of a teenage boy and you're thinking, how can I be cool and get my son the right thing? They've actually taken that problem away from you because they know what's
now
cool,
they know
right?
him. They choose. Yeah. They say, this will be his size and this will look good on him. And without a doubt, I bring home something for him and he loves it.
Yeah, and you become the superstar. So that's really great.
I'm the cool mum.
Yeah.
But, Carol, I think the interesting point is I've never, as I said, never bought anything on sale from that store. But are we as consumers generally are we drugged by discounts? Do we look for discounts? Is that what we want? Is that what's driving this kind of pressure on retailers?
Yeah, look, I think it's twofold. I think it's the current economic environment and the squeeze that households have on their income to just pay for everyday things and pay for the essentials.
Crazy cost of living. It's out of control, isn't it? A lot of people just really struggling.
That's right. So to be able to justify buying something new for yourself or your family, you have to really think about what that might look like. So I know from some retailers where they've had, sometimes a store will have buy one, get the second half price, 25% off.
Yeah.
And for a while there, they weren't getting any traction on that second item because customers were saying to them, I'm not confident I'm going to have a job. I'm worried about being able to pay my bills. I can't justify the second item because I can't really afford it. Whereas in the past, people would go, oh, yeah, I can get that on sale. I'll go and do that. So consumers are much more conscious right now of what they're spending and how they're spending.
Of course.
And there are so many sales with the big guys, right? If you think about Briscoes is a very successful model and their model works for them and it works for them because of their own structure, their brand and profile, the size, how they do their buying, exactly what they do. But everyone knows there's always a sale on at Briscoe.
Well, yeah, and the corollary is if you go into Briscoe's and there's not a sale, it's like, what? I remember having that experience myself. I was like, what do you mean? Briscoe's is always on sale. I'm not going to buy anything if it's not on sale. So, but that is such a different model, right? That's an always on discounting model versus what I think the other retailers are looking at Black Friday or Boxing Day as an opportunity to discount some stuff to draw in that foot traffic or the web traffic to actually try and get people buying other products. Carolyn, you made an interesting point before. Obviously, it has been a tough time. It still is for consumers. Everyone has to think carefully about where they're spending their money. And I think we've got a really interesting stat. The Xero economists looked at the Stats NZ retail data that showed that if consumers not spend more, but if they divert 10% of what they already spend to small businesses, to local businesses, that could put $11 billion more into the hands of our small business economy, which is pretty significant. So that's not spending more. That's just actually being conscious consumers and thinking, well, where are you putting your dollars? Who are you buying from? And making that choice to actually support local. And we talk about it since COVID. We've talked about shop local. But actually, it makes a real difference, doesn't it?
Phenomenal, isn't it? You kind of think 10% of what you're spending, if you had discretionary spend of $200 a month and you spent $20 of that in a small store that's in your local community, it's New Zealand owned, it's a sole owner, what difference that would make for that business to be able to stay open, and yet you're still probably, you've still got the same spend. You're diversifying it across the whole of the sector, and that would be a phenomenal outcome for retailers as a whole. And small businesses are the heart of the New Zealand economy.
They are.
In retail as in any other part of New Zealand.
Yeah, well, 97% of businesses are small businesses, and that's massive. That is the backbone of our economy, and so we really do all need to be thinking about how we support retail. I mean, retail has changed so much over the years, hasn't it, with online becoming such a prevalent part of how we shop. Behaviour has changed, consumer behaviour has changed, and you don't always, I know myself, sometimes if I'm busy, I'll buy online, and I'm a sucker for a discount. I think, I'll buy that dress because it's 50% cheaper, and invariably, it arrives, doesn't even fit me properly. So it would have been better off going into the store and trying it on. But our behaviour has changed so much. So we really do have to kind of keep labouring that message about go into a local store, form a relationship with the person who works there or the people who work there, because the experience is so much better.
Absolutely.
Usually.
Look, I think there's a couple of things with that. One is that what we know in retail is that 85% of sales still happen in bricks and mortar. So in New Zealand, most people still go
that
into
much.
store.
That surprises me.
But what does happen is that your online presence is your shop window. So I remember when I was young, we used to refer to it as window shopping, right?
Yeah.
You'd go out and you'd be browsing around the shops thinking, I might get this or that or the other thing. Not today, but in payday or whenever it might be. But now what people do is they do their research online. Invariably, that's the first port of call. So even a small retailer has to ensure that their online presence is really relevant and that it's up to date. It's got enough information on there that people will want to do more. So either that they'll purchase online or they'll come in store to do more. So if you're looking for a new backpack or a new DIY tool or something like that, you'll do some research online and then you'll decide I'll go to this store and this store just to compare the two and work out what's best for me. So you have to get in that pool. Yes. You have to make sure that your website is up to date, that your digital platforms are really promoting who you are and what makes you different. So it is thinking about your own marketing and carving away some time away from shop floor to do that work or have someone do it for you so that you can still be attracting the right people in and get 10% of that market, get 10% of the share so that you can have your percentage of that, what was it, $11 billion?
Yeah, that's right. It's huge. I mean, I think, there's a few things when I think about something that I was really crushed by was the closing of Smith & Co.'s.
Yes.
Because obviously that was, a massive New Zealand, but particularly Auckland department store. I mean, I grew up going to Smith & Co.'s. It was a big outing. To your point, Carolyn, window shopping was looking around the shops. I'm going out with my mum and we'd be going to Smith & Co.'s. And, for me, it's like that was just such a symbol of the decline of the retail sector. The fact that Smith & Co.'s couldn't stay open in this environment was crushing. And I think a lot of people felt that way. And you go down lots of different shopping areas and there are lots of Felice signs in the retail store windows. What can we do? What can retailers do to try and, attract that customer? You mentioned a few things about having your digital platform, but what about the in-store experience? Well, obviously, good customer service, but what about the way the stores are set up? Any advice you have for retailers on that front?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've got to keep it fresh. You have to be thinking a little bit about what is your store and who are your customers and what is your stock. So it should tell a story and you really want to capture that story when someone's walking past the window so that they'll come in the front door and then they see those products that they're after as they come through. So you've got to be able to have a journey. You don't want your shelves to be overstocked. You know what it's like if you go into a store. I'm a bit of a shopper myself. And
well, I would hope so as the CEO of Retail NZ.
And I have been known to buy a few clothes in my time, and it's so much easier to go into a store when you can pull things out and see things. So regardless of the type of store, whether it's a gift store or it's a bike shop or whatever it might be, don't overstock your store. Make sure you've got enough stock out there that people can see what you've got. Have a sign that says more size or more options out the back, just ask us or something like that. But ensure that there's good lighting, that there's good flow through the store, that you can see your customers as they're coming in and that you've got an ability to approach them early, that you've got good sight of line as they're coming through, because especially on the other side in terms of retail crime, it's really important. Customer service is a great deterrent for retail crime and it doesn't cost you anything other than a smile and some good engagement. So really ensuring that those things look good. People today want an experience when they go into their store, right? Yeah. And if you think about the difference between an older store with creaky floorboards and a bad layout and not good lighting, no mirrors or any of those sorts of things, or no way in which you can visualize that product in your home, clothes on you or anything like that, it makes it that much more difficult. So really thinking about those things. We know that the modern stores and modern malls are really places places that people like to go and spend time, because, you know, in some of the modern malls, you've got greenery, you've got light, you've got food, you've got a wide variety of stores, and people don't just go there to shop, but they'll go there as a social occasion.
Totally. But then it costs more to be in a mall. The rent is higher, right?
So, that's right. There's compromises, and you have to really dig in and see how that looks. And we do know right now with landlords that when leases are coming up for renewal, you've got two types of landlords that we're hearing from members. One that is really wanting to work with you to ensure that it's affordable for you to stay, and they want to structure the lease in a way in which it's relevant to the economy now and it's got room to grow later. And there's the others that just go, no, I need an increase of X dollars, and that's forcing businesses to close and make different decisions. We're hearing from members that are closing or potentially moving that lease renewal time is a time when they're making that decision. And for a small retailer, you need to be really clear. I think the other thing for a small retailer that they can do so much better than a big guy is being agile. What we do know is that the average sale price over the last couple of years has been dropping. So you've got the ability to adjust really quickly. You could order in some stock and see if it works. That's like at a different price point. If you're a fashion store, you could get some jewellery in, you could get some scarves, you might get some lipsticks from somewhere. Just having different items or giftware in your store that's priced a little bit lower. So if someone still wants to come in and get a treat, that they've got something that they can afford that they couldn't afford if they were buying a whole outfit. So just thinking a little bit about where we're at right now. And so small stores can be agile. You can go and source, a little bit of different stock to bridge those gaps.
So Carolyn, you mentioned something earlier that I think is really interesting, which is about retail crime. So what's been happening on that front? Because I think we've all heard stories about, shops, that there's been jewellery stores where people have kind of been held up almost at gunpoint. And I mean, I know someone who's been through that personally, and it's obviously horrifying. And there's been an increase, I think, obviously with the economy being tough and cost of living pressures, people have perhaps, gone and behaved in ways that they otherwise might not have under the kind of duress of financial pressures. What's been the experience for retailers on that front, and what's being done to support retailers?
Yeah, look, to be honest, the cost of living isn't driving retail crime itself. So someone that is in a place of deprivation is not stealing to survive. There are the odd customers that go through the supermarkets where that's the case, but they're generally picking up a loaf of bread and some fruit and a can of something and trying to get out the door. They're not stealing thousands of dollars worth of goods jewelry, or a big full, hundreds of dollars in a trolley. They're just getting a few items. And the supermarkets support them by giving them a bag of stuff. They normally refer them to a food bank and the charity that they're partnered with and work through from there. But what we are seeing is organised crime. So it is, people stealing to order, whether it's in a supermarket or in other spaces, and that's a big part of it. Then there's another part where people that have addictions, so either drug or alcohol, and the meth space is really bad in New Zealand right now, and so we're seeing a high level of drugs, and so to get that next fix, people are just going out to steal something so they can buy their next hit, have the next hit, and then they go again. And then there's the youth crime. So the youth crime is complicated. People as young as 10 or 11 stealing. And the prevalent part of youth crime is a smallish number of people causing a lot of the damage and crime. And some of that's about gaining notoriety, some of it that is gang related, some of that is people making poor decisions and getting caught up with the wrong crowd. So it is really tricky because it's a really difficult place to prosecute and get the right outcomes, because if somebody goes down the pathway of going into remand and through into a youth facility, they generally don't come out a better person.
Yeah, it's very complicated, isn't it?
It's very complicated.
And what can retailers do to protect themselves?
Yeah, so there's...
I know there's like software available, there's cameras. What is some good advice?
So the first thing is customer service. Like, if you're welcoming people as they come in store, if someone's coming in to steal something, They know that you've clocked them. They know that you're asking and engaging with them. There's not an opportunity for them to pick something up and put it in a bag. They'll turn around and go out. So, that will solve a lot of issues if you're doing that up front. You've got your store layout, making sure that you can see all of your stock and that you can see what people are doing, and you've got cameras in those blind spots and you can keep an eye on those things. So I think being really cognizant of those sorts of things. For some smaller stores, things like fog cannons can be really useful. If you're in a store that has high value goods and you're at risk, you could have things like panic alarms, pendants where you can ring those sort of bells and stuff. One of the key things is to have a plan. So if you're in a store and you've had neighbours that have been hit or you've been hit before with crime, then make sure you've got, especially for like a jewellery store, have a plan. Understand who of your staff have got the right skills to be doing various little tasks. And you give everyone one task. I know there's a story of a jewellery store that was robbed in Auckland a few years ago, and there was about 4 or 5 staff there, and the owner there had regular training with staff around what they were to do if they were going to have people come in. They all had one small job. Someone was to ring the police, someone was to look after any customers in store, someone else was to interact with the offenders at hand, and just one small thing is all you needed to do. And as a result, the offenders stole a significant portion of jewellery, but actually what happened was they were found within an hour or so because someone quickly went and called the police, closed the door and kept everyone safe, made sure, and someone else did something else. And so everyone had one small task to remember based on what their best skill sets were. So they recovered all of the stolen property.
Wow.
And it does say you can have a plan, but you have to practice it. So being really clear about those things. Then you've definitely got, obviously everyone has CCTV in their stores, making good use of that, making sure that you are in contact with your neighbouring businesses. So chat to them, talk to them, what's happening. In Wellington, there's a system called Eyes On, which is supported by the City Council and the police, and it's an informal, shall we say, structure where retailers are letting other retailers know of who's in the area, because they generally know those that are stealing and those sorts of things. So those strategies can be really good, knowing your neighbours and keeping in touch with everyone so that you've got good strategies there. If you're a bigger business, you might be looking at something like facial recognition technology and how that can help you by controlling who's coming in store, because in retail you can't control who's in store, and so if there's violent and aggressive behaviour, which happens a lot in the supermarkets and some of the other big stores, you can control who's in store if someone's offended previously and you prevent them from coming in at entry point. Makes a big difference. So there's no one fix for retail crime. You've got to have multiple ways in which you're dealing with retail crime and thinking about a wide range of things. De-escalation training is super important. There's 2 key training modules for retailers. One is about customer service and the other one's about de-escalation. And de-escalation in the past was when you had angry customer. And now it's quite a bit more. It's escalated quite a bit higher, but it doesn't mean that de-escalation is not important. And awareness. It's that awareness of who's just walked into your store and what behaviours they're portraying and what they're doing.
Yes. So very complex trading environment for retailers, really, thinking about customer service and then de-escalation and kind of managing in this new world of digital window, replacing the shop window and being really important, having a really good digital platform being really important. What does the future look like for retail in New Zealand, do you think?
Look, I think the future's bright. Our retailers, we've got a survey we do every quarter with our members, and it's called Retail Radar, and our members, retailers are an optimistic bunch, right? So, something like 66% of retailers have said that they're optimistic about the future. And that's because, and the survey was up to the 30th of September, and that's because this quarter is like the busy quarter.
Yes.
They know they've got brand new stock. It's looking amazing. They're optimistic and positive about selling it. They're salespeople after all. So they're optimistic. And then the other piece is that a lot of the headline news we're hearing is about all of these things the government are doing and these little snapshots about great things that are going to come.
Yeah.
And we're kind of almost sitting on our hands waiting for those things to come. But the reality is that 62% of retailers for the last 6 months have not met sales targets.
I mean, that's huge. That's a significant proportion.
Yeah, and over 60% of retailers have said they're not hiring additional staff for Christmas, and that's significant.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know my nephew, he's just finishing school, and lots of those school leavers want summer jobs, and most of them can't get them. They can't get the retail jobs that they might have in the past to support them saving up for university.
Yep.
So it's having a big knock-on effect
on the whole
economy,
right?
Community.
So those young ones leaving school, or those university students that normally rely on some holiday work so that they can help fund next year.
That's right.
We hope it doesn't impact their ability to continue with their studies or what their future holds. So it is tough for everyone because it has that knock-on effect.
Yeah, I mean the OCR has been coming down, and so I think we can hope there might, with mortgage rates starting to come down, maybe a little bit more discretionary spending as we're coming into the Christmas shopping period and Black Friday and Cyber Monday and these new shopping events, that people might have a little bit of extra money that they can spend. And if, as we said before, if they divert a bit into local businesses, actually that could have a really positive impact on the economy for us going forward, couldn't it?
Absolutely. So if you look at the interest rates for mortgages through the bank, so a year ago to now, if you were refixing now from a year ago, you'd have an extra, on average, probably $350 to $400 extra in your back pocket, and that'll get people the ability to breathe. And one of the things that we actually need to give, there's a catch-22 that sits here because consumers don't have a lot of confidence at the moment. Businesses are optimistic because they know all the economic factors, that they know the strategies there and everything's in play. But we actually need people to start spending. Yeah. And people need to be confident in order to spend, but if they spend, then the economy gets moving and it gets starting and people start thinking about hiring more people and all of those sorts of things. So it's really tricky, right? Because unless we spend, the economy's not going to get that boost that we need in order to generate more jobs and for us all to prosper. But consumers are still lacking a little bit of confidence. So hoping that anyone with a mortgage that's refixing will be able to see some of that relief of pressure in their household income. And then, we are expecting another 25 basis point cut in November.
Yeah, so crossing fingers.
Crossing fingers and toes. And really, there's not much further the Reserve Bank would probably go, I imagine. So we really want to...
I mean, the government can do what they can do, and then I think the rest of us have to do what we can do, right? And we have to support our local economies, our local communities. And as you said, if we can spend locally, do that to try and stimulate our local communities, and then that will have a positive knock-on effect. And of course, I think, at this time when things are tough for retailers, there are tools available for them to help understand their businesses. It's more important than ever to actually know your business, to understand your business. And, obviously if you're a Xero customer, there are tools, analytics, cash flow forecasting, looking at, what went well for you last year and what should that mean that you do this year to encourage, attracting customers, managing your expenses. So leveraging digital tools were available to really try and stay tapped into exactly what's going on in your business is critically important right now, don't you think?
Oh, cash flow is the most important thing, right? If you don't understand your cash flow, you can't understand whether you can discount any stock or not.
Right.
And you can't understand if you can buy more stock or if you can afford anything. So
and what your margins are. So
that's right.
What SKUs should you discount versus those that you really can't because there is not much of a margin?
And really understanding what's selling and what's not selling and thinking about strategies to move that stock and how you'll go about doing that. So I think that is really important. And the other thing we really want to encourage people to do is buy in New Zealand. So when people think about buying through the likes of Temu or Shein, that money goes offshore. It doesn't stay in the New Zealand economy and it doesn't help New Zealanders. The other thing it doesn't do is that those products don't have there's no fallback for the consumer. So there's no guarantee that it meets the health and safety standards in New Zealand. There's a whole lot of toys. It's been Toy Week recently at the beginning of November, and we know that there's a lot of toys that come in from Temu and Shein, and they don't meet the health and safety standards in New Zealand. So you need to be really careful when you're thinking about buying Christmas presents online especially for young ones. We want to protect our tamariki, so be really careful about that. But when you are buying from the likes of Temu and Shein, they don't meet the Consumer Guarantees Act. They don't have to comply to the Fair Trading Act, the health and safety, all of those standards. We don't know their labour policies, how they're looking after staff.
You have to wonder how things are so cheap. It doesn't take much to think, well, probably they're not paying the people who are making these products very much at all. You can't produce things that cheaply if you've got minimum wage requirements in an economy, right?
That's right. And they're not from sustainable materials or anything like that, right? There's a lot of it we know that can break quite quickly and it ends up on landfill.
Yeah.
And those things that ends up on our landfill in New Zealand, and then there's a cost to that. So I think there's that, really reach out to buy from some smaller stores, buy in New Zealand. Doesn't mean you can't buy online from New Zealand retailers, but we really want people to buy in New Zealand and really help kickstart that economy. And then from the retailer's perspective, just really understanding their cost structure and their cash flow is going to be important to see their way through.
That's right. So key message, shop local. Support the economy of Aotearoa New Zealand and spend what you can this retail period, November, December, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Boxing Day, Christmas, to support our economy.
Absolutely.
Carolyn, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast today. Thanks for your time. And let's see what happens this retail period. Hopefully it goes well for retailers.
Fingers crossed. Thanks, Bridget.
Thanks.
Kia ora.